Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennon. This week, the University of Pittsburgh is coming under a lot of criticism from students who want them to cancel a trio of events on transgender issues. State lawmakers are even joined this call, and it mirrors a lot of things that we're seeing nationally about college students coming out and speaking out against speakers and events that they perceive as being too right-leaning. So free speech advocates in Pennsylvania have actually raised the alarm on this, particularly from the angle of state lawmakers chiming in. Anthony, can you talk a little bit more about the implications for free speech?
Yeah, so all of this is just focused on the University of Pittsburgh with 3 upcoming events. But what's interesting, we see a lot of campus protests and anger whenever there's any event centered around transgender issues. But what makes it interesting here is that we're also getting state level politicians demanding the university actually cancel these events. In one case recently, one legislator said that she would possibly not vote for the University of Pittsburgh's appropriation from the General Assembly if they go forward with this. So 2 of these events are hosted by Turning Point USA. Their chapter at the University of Pittsburgh, March 24th, hosts Cabot Phillips, who's an editor for the Daily Wire, for an event on everything the media won't tell you. That one, I'm not actually sure if it's specifically on transgender-related issues, but Phillips, working for the Daily Wire, which has been an outlet that has been critical of different areas of transgender legal protections, that's been a lightning rod of sorts for anyone associated with Daily Wire coming onto a college campus. On March 27th, Turning Point USA will also host Riley Gaines, who's a former swimmer for the University of Kentucky, who was critical of Leah Thomas, a trans woman, being allowed to compete in NCAA events. And then on April 18th, the Pitt College Republicans will host a debate co-hosted with the Intercollegiate Studies Institute on transgenderism and womanhood, featuring Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire and Deidre McCloskey, who's an economist at the University of Illinois and a trans woman herself. So a Pitt student started a petition that's received almost 11,000 signatures, calling for the events to be canceled, saying that these are events of transphobia and hate. They can't be allowed to occur on the University of Pittsburgh's campus. We've had calls from the Pennsylvania House LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus condemning the events and saying that they should be canceled, that hate speech is not protected speech. So that it's been kind of the routine we've seen at a lot of other campuses. The University of Pittsburgh, for its part, is actually saying that they will not, cancel these events or stop them from going forward, saying that, just because a registered student organization hosts an event on campus does not mean it's an institutional endorsement. And the university upholds principles of protected speech and expression, as well as upholding commitments on diversity, inclusion, and equality. There's a lot of fire and brimstone going back and forth about this. But contrary to some other recent events, the University of Pittsburgh has actually not backed down or pressured student groups to cancel it. And Turning Point USA itself, the Pitt student chapter, praised the reaction from the university, saying that they've been giving them consistent support for hosting this.
For context, this isn't the first time in recent years that University of Pittsburgh has come under fire from an ideological standpoint. As you mentioned before, some state reps are threatening not to vote for state funding towards the University of Pittsburgh. And this happened last year in the House of Representatives. Republicans were uncomfortable appropriating money to the University of Pittsburgh over fetal tissue research. And so the university's stance here seems to align, with the idea of free speech. We can't say, that this is, the university holds progressive values or conservative values, that they are truly trying to give a voice to both sides of the spectrum and everyone in between. And as far as my recollection, the University of Pittsburgh is unique in not canceling these events. I know that Penn State had some issues in the last year. Can you talk a little bit more about what happened at that university and, versus where the University of Pittsburgh is standing on this?
Yeah, so Penn State, if I'm remembering correctly, they were bringing in the founder of the Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes, who was coming to give a speech. And I believe at the last minute or the day of, I believe they canceled it. There are some very raucous protests on campus trying to derail that. And so, yeah, it's one of these things where this often seems to be happening just as it was 5-6 years ago, maybe more at this point, I suppose, when a lot of campus groups would bring Milo Yiannopoulos, I believe his last name was, who is very much a right-wing bomb thrower of trying to goad students getting upset and kind of doing these sorts of things. What I think is interesting, though, especially with the University of Pittsburgh, is these events do not seem that way, or at least especially what's important to remember, at least with the College Republican event co-hosted with the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. They're bringing Michael Knowles, but they're also bringing in a trans speaker as well. And she has actually condemned the protests trying to get these events canceled. McCloskey tweeted out, I believe last week, 1,000 people have signed a petition. They should be ashamed. And she actually, she called, she said, true, Knowles is an anti-Jesus Catholic, a fascist advocating state power over ideas, but we live in a free country. So McCloskey was very emphatic here in really emphasizing that we live in a country that has very strong free speech protections, and it's better to engage rather than demand that any sort of these debates or these ideas are completely off topic and illegitimate for anyone to discuss in polite society. And Pittsburgh has been praised for refusing to back down. PEN America also chimed in, criticizing lawmakers for trying to urge the university to cancel it, saying that it's deeply troubling that government officials are pressuring this cancellation without an eye to the broad free speech implications. Rather than trying to get these events canceled, PEN America urged students, not to demand university action and administrators to take this out of the hand of students, of young adults, but instead, protest or offer counter speech rather than trying to shut down these events. So it's nice to see that at least the University of Pittsburgh is holding the line and really making sure that students have their free speech rights respected. But I do think it's concerning that lawmakers are joining in these calls to completely call anything like this off limits.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennon, this is Kristen Smith. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.
Freedom and liberty are important to all of us. If you're looking for civil, intellectual conversations with those shaping the future of freedom, try the Future of Freedom podcast with me, Scott Bertram. We speak with leaders across the country in the greater conservative and libertarian movements. In-depth conversations about where the next intellectual battles will happen across the country. It's the Future of Freedom podcast. Find it at americastalking.com or wherever you get your podcasts.